I'm not sure if they still make the Buckshot Mudders anymore, but when they did, they came pre-drilled from the factory for tire studs. A friend of mine let me borrow a stud gun and some studs, and I put all the studs in here you see. But it took a while because I'd driven it before that without studs, and when you do that, the holes will fill up with tiny little rocks and stuff, and so I had to dig all those out with some needle nose pliers, and that took quite a while to do all that. So, but I finally did get them. Later on, I bought this stud gun at a garage sale, and I decided to use that on these old tires I had on the motorhome. They still had real good tread, real good winter style tread, and so but they're just kind of getting kind of old for the weight of the motorhomes, but I figured they'd be just fine for the weight of the Bronco. So I studded this tire, and I got a couple seasons out of it. And just this year I started noticing it wobbling quite a bit, so I did some checking on it, and I noticed that, as you can see, it's just a bit crooked there. And it's got this bald wear pattern at that spot too. So I figured that wasn't safe anymore. So I pulled that off, and now it's back to the Buckshot tires for the winter. And since I still have about a full box of studs left over, I figured I would go and drill and stud the center lugs, at least some of them, on the Buckshots. Okay, the first thing I do is lay out a pattern where I want the holes to be. In this situation, I'm going to skip every other lug and at the same time stagger them. And so it's a lot easier to lay it out now than to drill it and find out you drilled your pattern wrong. See, I would have made a mistake right there with the drill, but oops, see, that should go up there. This one should go here. Okay, then I got a guide block, and it's kind of contoured to about the same radius, or the contour to the tire there, the outside of the tire. And it's got a hole in there for going through, and I set the drill and the chuck to the height on the studs there. And these studs are a number 13 stud, which means they're 13 32nds drill hole depth is what they're supposed to be. If they were size 17 stud, they'd be a 17 32nds deep hole. So I basically just put it over the mark. And drill them out. I like to run the drill back and forth a few times. It kind of helps clean out all the rubber chips in there. The drill block also helps keep the drill straight so that the stud goes in straight. Most importantly, it keeps me from going too deep into the tire, which could be a bad deal. Okay, Put the safety glasses on and blow out any rubber that might still be stuck in the holes. Okay, then we take some soap. It's pretty much pure soap. I put a little bit of water in it just to make it so it will squirt easy. And that just kind of helps lubricate the hole and makes the stud go in a little bit easier. It makes the gun go in a little bit easier too. Lets it spread the hole a little bit easier. Okay, we hook our gun up. And this is just a one at a time type gun. It doesn't have a magazine on it, so you gotta feed each stud one at a time. There's a little magnet in there that kind of helps hold the stud in, and it sucks it back in. Put it in the hole and kind of hold some pressure down on it. Pull the trigger, and you got a stud in there. The reason why I'm doing only half of the lugs here is because I've had these little feelers, these spreader fingers here, break on me twice, and somehow I've been able to weld them and they've held, but each time they've broke, they've been one that I haven't welded, but I still don't trust them yet. So I want to get through each tire, each of the 4 tires, and then if this thing still works, then I'll do the lugs in between the studs there. And you'll notice that some of them are still kind of sticking up a little way. Sometimes that'll happen. So all it takes is just a little whack with a hammer, and that helps seats them pretty good. Well, probably just driving on the road would probably do the same thing. Okay, well that's about it. And like I said, I got the stud gun from a garage sale. It was $15. And then I got the studs themselves from Myers Tire Supply. The box of 1,000 cost $57. So you can think of it about as a half a penny a piece. And it looks like it's starting to snow again. It's about 27 degrees out, so I'm going to get the rest of these tires all studded up too and get them mounted on a Bronco and hopefully leave them there for the rest of the winter. Okay, it's been about 5 weeks since I did the studding demo part of the video. I kind of got sidetracked and never did finish the editing. But what's happened is I ran the Buckshots for about a week on a Bronco during the snow, and they worked out pretty good. But then the threat of snow kind of disappeared, so I went back to the old studded tires and then 2 of the summer tires up front, and ran those for about another 4 weeks. And yeah, then as you can see, the snow has returned, and so the Buckshots are back on the Bronco. After about a couple weeks of running with those other tires, I started noticing an out of balance type of wobbling situation. And so I started looking at the tires on the back, and let me blow them off here for you. Sure enough, one of them was bent, all crooked again, just like that, just like this other one I showed earlier. So I took a closer look at one of the holes where a stud once was, and after blowing all the dirt out of it, I could clearly see the steel beltings inside. And the stud was obviously riding right on top of that. What happens when I blow some air in that hole? Scary. The first thing I thought was, oh crap, I drilled the holes too deep. And that might be true, but at this point I really don't think so. This is one of the studs that I used for these tires. And as you can see, the base of the stud is real close to the same diameter as the hole in the tire there. And this would be one of the drills, or the drill, that I used to drill the holes in the tires. And as you can see, the drill is quite a bit smaller than a hole. And in fact, this drill would have left a hole probably smaller than a drill, because the rubber in a tire probably would have shrunk back up slightly after being drilled. So the question remains is, what would cause this stud, which is designed to be used in tires, to wear its way through a good 1/8 of an inch of rubber, make contact with the steel belting, possibly even cutting through it in places, I'm not sure about that yet, and ultimately causing the whole tire to become warped and distorted? Well, let's take a look at a few facts. First off, this is a number 15 stud, which means I would have drilled a 15 30-seconds deep hole, or slightly less than 1/2 of an inch. Now that stud is at least one size taller than what I used in the Buckshots, but for the amount of tread still remaining on these tires, it shouldn't have been a problem. Now, out of the two tires that haven't gone to crap yet, this one has the most tread remaining. And at an area where this rock got captured here, I measured about .265, which is just a little bit over 1/4 of an inch of tread remaining, and that's at best on this tire. Like most motorhomes on the roads these days, mine's got duals on the back for a total of 6 tires. These two are the ones I ended up not using to stud and put on a Bronco. The bottom one was a no-brainer. It was a totally different tread pattern and brand and everything, but the top one here was visibly more worn than the others. Right now, I was measuring, going all around here, I was getting like around .430 to .470 tread depth on there. And what I think happened here was that when I got the motorhome, these two were on the same hub, part of a dual. And I think the previous owner probably had a blowout and replaced the blowout with this tire at the bottom. And for whatever case it might be, whether it was a smaller diameter or just being a different brand, I think the difference there caused this tire to wear out more than all the others. So let me go check my records and see how much tread was left on the tires that I did end up using on the Bronco at the time I studded them. For those of you that watched my previous video on a leaky fuel pump, you might remember my maintenance and mileage notebook here. So this is like the second time it's come in handy just recently, but going back to the November of 2009 is when I put the studded tires on the back, and about a week or so later I studded the front and put those on. And as you can see, I left a note here on the tread depth of the 4 tires that I studded at that time. The minimum tread depth was .550 and the maximum was .580. So if we take those numbers and subtract the .260 or .268 or something, whatever that was, on a good studded tire out there, we come up with about a quarter of an inch to 5/16 of an inch of tread that has worn off so far since November of 2009, and that would be about 2 winters ago. Now, thumbing through this notebook and adding and subtracting all of the miles that I've had between the summer tires and these studded tires for the winter, I've come up with, for the winter of 2009 to 2010, just under 3,600 miles. For the winter of 2010 to 2011, just over 4,000. And this winter I only got about 1,500 miles on them, for a total of 9,163 miles. So in other words, these tires were halfway worn out only after about 9,000 miles. Just some tread wear comparisons here. These are the tires that have been running in the summertime. And even though they're probably considered illegally worn out now, or at least close to it, they do have nearly 40,000 miles on them. I'll be replacing those with some new all-season or all-terrains here shortly. As for the Buckshots, I'm not really sure how many miles I got on them. I bought them just a couple weeks after I bought the Bronco, which would have been 1992 or 93. I ran them for about 2 years, and then I put the studs in the outer lugs, like I mentioned earlier. And of course, after you do that, then they're only good for the winter time. So yeah, they're 20 years old. And if I had to guess, I would say I got about 20,000 miles on them. Back then, Buckshots were considered to be a high mileage tire for a mud terrain. And if you notice the grooving in the center lugs here, back when they were new, that was about a quarter inch deep, and as you can tell now, they're only about maybe a 1/16 of an inch. You might also notice that I only ended up studding every other lug, whereas I originally wanted to stud every lug if the stud gun held out, and it did. But after seeing the damage that the studs might have done to the old motorhome tires, I kind of got chickened out, and I decided not to tempt fate any further, so I just ended up studding every other lug, like you see there. I have no doubt that studding these tires has played a major role in the failure we've seen on these two here. Even though this second tire shows evidence that eventually that might have happened on its own too. I'm not sure if this was caused by a cut or an age crack, but as you can see, the cords are not very deep in this tire. The question that remains is, what would cause this stud, that is designed to be used in tires, cause a tire to fail? Or maybe it's just as equally as important to know whether a tire is designed to have studs. In other words, if they're not, then don't put the studs in them. And that would probably be the safest bet to avoid failures like this. Or possibly measuring the tread depth and using that as a maximum safe stud length was a bad idea also. Maybe I should have gone several stud sizes shorter. But after seeing how quickly these tires wore down, even the ones that haven't shown any signs of failure yet, this is my final theory here on what I think might have went wrong. I'm thinking that the tire actually wore down faster than what the stud was designed to wear down. And in doing so, it put a lot of pressure on the base of the stud, enough pressure that would cause it to be pushed through the rubber even deeper than what it was drilled. Then later on, as the stud lost its support of the rubber tire around it, it began to lay down at an angle like that, as you can kind of see is evident of some of these other studs here. And in doing so, what was once a nice wide base was now an edge pushing up against the steel belting inside there and eventually cutting them. Alright, so that's the end of my Studley video. I'm far from being an expert on tires or tire studs, so if anyone has any comments, ideas, or other theories on what they've seen here, feel free to let me know. And yeah, thanks for watching.